Around 300,000 years ago, another kind of human walked the earth, Neanderthals. They weren't monsters or myths. They were people. They made tools, hunted animals, sang around campfires, and raised children just like we do for hundreds of thousands of years. They thrived in Europe and parts of Asia, surviving freezing Ice Age winters and dangerous predators. But then, surprisingly quickly, they disappeared. Within a few thousand years, they were gone, leaving behind only caves, stone tools, and bones. For over a century, scientists have asked the same question. Why did Neanderthals vanish? Some thought they couldn't handle sudden climate changes. Others believed they lost out to modern humans, our direct ancestors, when the two groups competed for land and food. Still, others suggested disease or simple bad luck. But none of these explanations fully solved the mystery. The real breakthrough came when scientists learned how to read ancient DNA by studying genetic material from Neanderthal bones. They uncovered a much clearer picture of what actually happened, and the results were surprising. The story begins in Siberia, in caves called Denisova and Chagarskia. Inside, archaeologists discovered tiny bone fragments and teeth. At first, these fossils just sat in storage. But years later, when new technology became available, researchers extracted DNA from them. What they found was groundbreaking. The DNA revealed that Neanderthal groups were extremely small and often closely related. In other words, Neanderthals weren't just a few here and there. They were shrinking as a population. Their DNA showed long stretches of identical code, which happens when close relatives have children together generation after generation. This wasn't an isolated case. Scientists studied Neanderthal remains from caves in Croatia, Belgium, and the Caucasus, and the same pattern appeared everywhere. Instead of thriving, Neanderthals were splitting into smaller and smaller groups, tiny isolated communities scattered across Europe and Western Asia. And this created a huge problem. Small groups are fragile. If there are only 30 or 40 people in your community, even small setbacks can be devastating. A tough winter, a poor hunting season, or a new disease could wipe out entire families. Harmful genetic mutations also have a harder time disappearing in small groups, which weakens the population. Over time, ancient DNA confirmed all of this. The Y chromosomes inherited from fathers were surprisingly uniform, showing that only a handful of male lineages survived. The mitochondrial DNA inherited from mothers narrowed into fewer and fewer branches. It was as if their family tree was slowly being pruned until only a few twigs were left. Meanwhile, another kind of human was spreading into Neanderthal territory. Us. Around 60,000 years ago, modern humans began moving into Europe and Western Asia. They carried new types of tools, stronger social networks, and the ability to share ideas over long distances. Unlike Neanderthals, who lived in small, isolated groups, modern humans were connected. They traded, traveled, and passed down knowledge across hundreds of miles. When the two groups met, it wasn't always violent. We know this because their DNA mixed. Today, almost everyone outside Africa carries 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA. This means Neanderthals and modern humans had children together, and that DNA still affects us. It shapes our immune systems, our skin, and even how our bodies respond to sunlight. But here's the twist. While Neanderthal DNA lives on in us, the reverse wasn't true. Hardly any modern human DNA flowed back into Neanderthals after those first encounters. The fresh diversity, the genetic rescue they needed, never reached them. Their population stayed small, scattered, and vulnerable. As the Ice Age climate shifted, animals moved to new regions, and food sources changed. For large, well-connected modern human groups. This was difficult, but survivable. For tiny Neanderthal communities, it was a disaster. Scientists could even see this in the details of their DNA runs of homozygosity. Long stretches of identical genetic material proved that Neanderthal groups were extremely small. Population estimates suggested they may have dropped to just a few thousand individuals across all of Eurasia, and in some places, maybe only hundreds. Even burials inside caves told the same story. In one site, scientists found close relatives buried just a few meters apart. Fathers, daughters, uncles, and cousins living in very small family clusters. It was a sign that their world had grown too tight, with too little room for survival. This was the beginning of their decline, a slow unraveling written directly into their DNA. By the time modern humans entered Europe, Neanderthals were already struggling. Their groups were small, their numbers were low, and their communities were isolated from one another. But ancient DNA shows that the final push toward extinction didn't come from one single event. It was a combination of pressures that hit them all at once. First, there was competition. Modern humans and Neanderthals hunted many of the same animals: bison, deer, and mammoths. But modern humans often had more advanced tools. They crafted long, thin stone blades that were sharper and more versatile than the shorter, chunkier Neanderthal tools. Modern humans also built stronger social networks, meaning they could share tools and strategies across wide distances. If one group invented a new hunting trick, others quickly learned it. Neanderthals, in contrast, were more isolated. A new idea or tool might stay within one valley or cave, never spreading far. This meant they couldn't adapt as quickly as modern humans when conditions changed. Next, there was the environment. The Ice Age climate wasn't stable. Temperatures swung up and down, glaciers advanced and retreated, and the ranges of animals shifted with them. When prey animals like reindeer or bison moved hundreds of miles away, Neanderthal groups had a harder time following. With smaller communities, they didn't always have the numbers to send out scouting parties or take the risks needed to adapt. For modern humans, who had larger and more connected groups, these challenges were easier to overcome. Another possible factor was disease. Scientists can't directly prove what illnesses Neanderthals faced, but DNA evidence suggests our ancestors carried pathogens that Neanderthals may not have been exposed to before. In small populations, new diseases can spread quickly and wipe out whole groups. Even if disease wasn't the main reason for their extinction, it likely made survival harder. One by one, the final groups faded out. So, what's the real reason they went extinct? The clearest answer written in their DNA is this: they were too few for too long. Small, isolated populations don't have much room for error. A bad hunting season, a harsh winter, or an outbreak of illness can devastate them. Over thousands of years, these small hits built up, and Neanderthals could never recover their numbers. When modern humans arrived with larger populations and wider social networks, the contrast became even sharper. It's important to note that this doesn't mean Neanderthals were inferior or unintelligent. In fact, discoveries show they were capable of creativity and symbolic thought. They used pigments, wore ornaments, and possibly made cave art. They cared for their sick and elderly. In many ways, they were very much like us. But survival often comes down to demographics, not just intelligence. A community of a few hundred people is far more vulnerable than a network of tens of thousands. Neanderthals simply got stuck on the wrong side of that equation. Still, their story didn't completely end. Thanks to interbreeding, pieces of Neanderthal DNA live on inside us. Today, most people of non-African descent carry about 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA. Scientists have linked some of these genes to our immune systems, skin, hair, and even how our bodies adjust to sunlight. In a way, Neanderthals didn't entirely vanish. They became part of us. Their DNA also helps us understand what it means to be human. By comparing Neanderthal genomes with modern human ones, scientists can identify the genes that make us different. For example, some differences may be connected to brain development, language, or social behavior. Ancient DNA gives us a direct way to study our shared history and see how evolution shaped us. The mystery of their disappearance also carries a bigger lesson. It shows how fragile human populations can be. Neanderthals survived for hundreds of thousands of years, longer than our own species has existed so far, and yet, despite their skills and resilience, they eventually disappeared because their numbers stayed too low. It's a reminder that even strong, intelligent species can be vulnerable when they lack size and connection. When we think of Neanderthals, it's easy to imagine them as cavemen who couldn't keep up with us. But the truth is more complex. They were capable, resourceful people who lived through harsh conditions and thrived for hundreds of millennia. Their extinction wasn't the result of weakness, but of circumstances, small populations, limited networks, and bad luck at the wrong time. So the next time you hear the word Neanderthal, remember this: they weren't failures, they were survivors, lasting through ice and storms until the odds finally caught up with them. And thanks to their DNA, their story continues in every one of us. But where exactly did these Neanderthals come from? How did they get here?